soon. Okay. Well, all right. Well, thank you all for joining. As we discussed last time, tonight is about discussing the projects, which are the meat of the CEDS. Again, we did the SWOT last meeting, and I appreciate the group sticking with it as we did go over the allotted time, that extra hour or so. But I do appreciate us getting through that because that should make tonight's meeting a lot quicker. The other piece of the puzzle is that I wanted to share with the group that is really important is tonight's not the last night to get projects to us. And so we have a pretty decent list going, and we certainly want to hear more. I do have, I have a couple of examples. For instance, Parkville Water is getting back to me with their projects, and Leadville Sanitation as well got me something late this afternoon. So they're trickling in, so I'm glad to see that. We did pick up on the hospital expansion, St. Vincent Hospital. So there was some good stuff that got added today in the 11th hour before this meeting. But again, basically we have till the end of June to really get the final lists together. And my hope today is after we go through these different categories, that it starts to generate some thought processes around what else could be included and where you might jump in. And if you have ideas, please by all means chime in and add to the list, and we can always do more research as we go. So getting into the presentation here, again, like I said last meeting, we did the SWOT. And again, this meeting is looking at refining those project lists. I didn't show up here without doing my homework. And again, part of my homework after this meeting is to continue to chase down projects and talk to those various districts and the city and as well as the county to make sure we're getting those projects clarified and ready to go. Again, I showed the slide last time, the importance of this for anyone new to this process as well. This is really an EDA funded effort because of all the different stimuluses we're seeing. It is important to note that the redistribution of federal funds to the state level also affects these projects' ability. And it's always great for our organization as well as the rest of the district to know what's out there. And again, I hope that by doing this plan and the way we're tackling it, this becomes an encyclopedia for when a new grant program is offered and our organization hears about it. We can flip to your county and see what kind of projects might be eligible, and to make sure we're in contact and disseminating that information to the folks that might apply. Again, we went through this the last meeting, so I don't want to overly state all this stuff, but I do think it's important to recognize that we did go back and change all of the yes and no's and the discussion points to your strengths and weaknesses. So we were paying attention. That previous PowerPoint is on the SCED website under regions like county, as well. This will also be. I'm going to actually switch out of the PowerPoint into this Word document in the middle of this presentation here in just a minute. For the fact of it's easier to follow and actually see how all these projects lay out in a document, and also talk through them a little bit easier. But again, we went through strengths, we went through the weaknesses. We talked about Lake County industry opportunities. There was a really good discussion around a bunch of these. And then, the last kind of pieces that I know we were rushing through and I want to just make sure I do actually spend a second on is just to ensure when we talk about threats and resiliency, which is really a main component of the CEDS, is how do we deal with potential new threats coming? One, we have looked at the hazard mitigation plan. So we're not asking to go through another major process that it was put that together for FEMA. And as basically FEMA is your disaster response. The EDA is your disaster recovery arms of the federal government. And so FEMA funds that initial threat analysis. And then again, what we actually talk about with the EDA are the economic threats that aren't natural disasters. And COVID is actually considered a nationwide national disaster, but also the types of type of things like a loss of a major industry and what that could mean. So with that, I know I ran through that quick, but that was the last meeting recap. Any questions about that last meeting before I jump into getting into these economic strategies? Okay, sometimes silence is golden. All right. So normally I have project sheets in front of you and I follow along like this in Zoom. I'm going to stop this and actually jump to the actual document and how these will actually look. Okay, and so Jeff, thanks for that comment. Let me jump to this. So can everyone see the Word doc?
Yep.
Do I need to make it bigger?
Make it a little bit bigger for old eyes. Yeah.
Like better? All
I have
right.
a copy here though.
All right. So the plan today is to go through and talk through these different economic strategies. Like I said, what's really unique about what we're doing in this is that it's not a typical public process in that we're asking for brand new ideas. We're actually asking what can be implemented and what has your community talked about that can be done in the next 5 years, and what projects are on the horizon. We're really looking towards implementation and funding, either engineering, planning, or shovel-ready projects. The first set I just want to share with everyone is this access to capital and what is currently going on at the regional level with CEDS. I always laugh, and this is kind of my young dumb moment that I have to look in the mirror, is this SoCo Angels and the Angel Investment Fund. I thought this was like a Hallmark movie thing where someone wrote a big check, and I didn't really realize that these are actually a federally regulated bank account, and it makes a lot of sense now that I know a little bit more about it. But believe it or not, our 13 county region is the only region that does not have an angel investment fund for our region. And this is actually something that the EDA will actually help fund and do investment loans. So we are trying to work with this as well as with the Southern Colorado Innovation Link, which is really heavy in the tech sector of this, and working with potential startups and entrepreneurs to get that initial investment and access to capital. Going next, the SBA packaging is the 504 loan. We used to actually do this as an organization. This dropped off with my predecessors for reasons that we probably don't need to spend into today. But the goal is to actually get that back. And we've actually can tell you that we have seen a very big, sharp decrease in the use of the SBA 504 loan program. And I think that's primarily because we don't have a local lending packager for this loan. So we're working hard to get this back. And we just actually spent a good bit of the board meeting work session talking about that. The final one on this one I always like to show, and I actually just had a email back from the Division of Housing, is talking about rural mixed use development revitalization program. We're trying to do this as a pilot program out in actually the Southeastern Plains, but it would be certainly germane to a place like Leadville that has a lot of mixed use development that have these historic downtowns in the potential upstairs buildings. And so, this is a great example of, when we talk about building a new housing unit and the amount of money that is involved in creating a new unit, when we talk about the availability of existing buildings, especially in our historic downtowns that have units, bringing those back to life could be at a fraction of the cost, especially in some of the places I've visited where they already have existing plumbing. I've actually been in a couple historic buildings and a couple of rural downtowns out on the Southeastern Plains that have kitchens, toilets, and there's just boxes sitting on top of them. And so if we're talking about minimal investments, but getting access to capital for those property owners, sorry, my dog has a squeaky toy. So
I heard the Vishla back in the background. That's
hilarious.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, he has a Vishla that is it's a weird breed. So
I really apologize. She got that toy and it was squeaking. This is Zoom, right? Again, my point to that is if we're able to bring back a unit for even $100,000 in a historic downtown building, not only are we preserving that building, but on top of that, we're doing it even at a fraction of cost of what it would cost us to build a new unit in these communities. So it's really something that we should be paying attention to. And I hope that if this program is funded in the next couple of years by the Division of Housing and DOLA, that this is something we can replicate in places like Leadville. So any questions on those? Okay. This next one was something that came out of a comment from Sarah, actually, about when we talked about ranching and agriculture as a strength. And I think it was a really good concept. And so I created a project around this. And I think, Chaffey County actually has a 0.5% sales tax now that goes to funding ranching operations and conservation. And so I think this, again, is intentionally vague in that it's conservation easement assistance. But I think this is a good comment that we heard from Sarah. So thank you. And so I created a project out of this under ranching. And so without any objections, I think, this was kind of I didn't get an actual project sheet for, but I think the concept came out of the discussions we had at the last meeting. Any objections to this being on here? Okay, great.
And is there anything additional, something that we need to add for agriculture or ranching?
I wish I could show you, the slide. I'm going to jump here real quick just because I have to. So, Marla, your comment the other day about the traditional, this is traditional ag, right?
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
Right. And to your point, I think it was well taken that the ag is not the same in sorry, I was reading the chat, is not the same in Lake County as it is in a lot of our rest of our district. And to that point, the things we were seeing are like weight scales, grain silos, these big industrial things that grain elevators in the other rest of the district. So I think this is a great way to acknowledge the ranching community and the importance it is to the landscape by ensuring we have this kind of program in here. So go ahead.
I wonder, because it's not necessarily only like conservation easement is one option, right? And so there's, what did I write down the other day from the EDC? Oh, I was going to chat with Marla wondering about like 1041 development or like mitigation through that kind of processing. Permitting. And so I don't know if I think this is fantastic, and thank you so much for listening and adding it. If conservation easement is too specific, then maybe we could just use broader language. I don't know.
Conservation assistance.
There you go. Yeah.
No, that's a great comment.
Yeah, if I could add though, I still maybe we can just like flag this and we can try to find additional language, because I think even conservation assistance, to my experience, it's like, still keeping in like full-on production ag. And some of the conversations I've had just, literally at the back of a pickup truck with folks is like, man, could I put like 2 Airbnbs on here and like rent to people who want to like help with haying season, like kind of the agritourism kind of angle, or providing to local farmers markets. So it's really, the 500-acre ranch or haying operation as like the sole support for keeping this in their family is just not happening.
So Jeff, that agritourism is a great project in itself.
Yeah.
I don't know how to spell agritourism. You're going to see my bad spelling here.
Close enough.
Thank you.
There it is. And then I will we will get to that here in the next coming days. So that's a great example.
Yeah, and I don't recall, again, you choose how this might be helpful, but I don't recall if we talked about the water enterprise developing as a resource for that through the county's augmentation plan. And but
I actually had a note to ask you that question around down a little bit below, but this
Okay.
could be like my question would be, does it fit better under agriculture, or does it fit better under critical infrastructure in the water aspect was going to be the question.
Ooh,
Well, let's
Yeah.
flag that and then make sure I don't forget to add it in one of the two places by the time we're done with this, Sarah. Okay.
very good. Thanks.
Okay. This next one is really important to kind of to talk about, as what CEDS is trying to do actually probably in the next 3 months and trying to move beyond the CEDS and really start to work the plan. And this is the broadband support office that we're trying to establish out of Pueblo, out of our Pueblo headquarters that would service all 13 counties. I think you guys did hear the spiel from my boss, Eric, about what we're doing and why we're asking for 1.5% of the American Recovery Fund to go after EDA funds and DOLA funds to then actually have something. One, I can tell you, I don't know enough about broadband to actually do broadband. And the reality of actually discussing through this is that without paying somebody the money that it's necessary to actually have a technical expert, you either pay it $250 an hour as a consultant, and they work for the person signing the checks. And that's how we've been doing it across the 13 counties. And it hasn't produced the results that we all need. Or it is having someone 24/7, 7 days a week working this issue and knowing this issue and actually putting, because this is a private utility, pitting the private utilities against each other to get capitalistic returns for our community, as well as having the ability to work with Lake County or the city of Leadville to partner on getting the infrastructure in that you can then lease to those providers and ensure, one, that you're getting high quality service, but two, more importantly, start to regulate and negotiate costs, which right now, if you don't own any infrastructure, it's really hard to go to a provider and ask them to negotiate their cost. And so this model has been, is not something new. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're reshaping the wheel, I would say. And this actually model has worked really well for the southwestern corner of the state in region 10 for Durango, that area around in there. They actually have had one person or an office created out of their cog that has been running this going forward. So we're hoping that this is a niche that we can assist. Again, we're trying not to be redundant in our communities, but try to fill those niches. Any questions on broadband? All right. So these are some good ones that we started to brainstorm, and I think this business development. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, talking about master planning and the development of the industrial park, and this is by the airport, correct?
Correct. And also adding, just identifying all the public land and knowing what we want on there. And I ran out of time today, Michael, to add that to this bullet. But the county owns a lot of land, and us strategically working with, and I, we could probably do it on our own. We don't really maybe need a consultant, but, really just saying, this property is what we want. But we need the back end infrastructure after that.
Okay.
The good news is the county does own a lot of land.
Like that makes sense. Okay. Resiliency plan for businesses and nonprofits. Marla, do you want to jump on this one too?
Yeah, I will. And I can type that in later if you want. It's this post-COVID, I'll call it a resiliency succession plan for businesses and nonprofits for the next pandemic crisis, whatever. The SBDC is working on this, but there's some federal funding out there that can assist a small business owner and a lot of minorities. I was looking at some minority grants that might be, and this was just like 5 minutes ago, Michael, that I was reading something about minorities for specifically for businesses, that we might add a program project in there for that, because we do have a lot of minority businesses here. I'll work on that one.
I'm just gonna make a and why don't you start? I'll add the minority, and why don't you continue on with the entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Yeah, in my past community, we got an EDA grant and a USDA grant to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem, and it was started at the high school, college, and then just entrepreneurs that were doing things in their basement, garages, and their back door. And it ended up, we created an incubator / makerspace workspace. You go through a mentoring program, you go through a training process, you have to do specific things in the community. And then the last thing we did was like a Shark Tank concept, and gave out some cash and in-kind prizes. And I've seen in the last 11 months, I'm almost been here a year. In the last 11 months, we have a lot of these entrepreneurs that are working in their basements and their garages and then in their spare bedroom. And I think we could really create some additional jobs, but they need that ecosystem support. So I can add a lot to this one too.
Great, cool.
And I don't want to keep it vague, because I know we have to keep it vague, but it's creating that ecosystem that allows them to have the mentors, the support system to move to virtual sales or to bricks and mortar.
And real quick, just to explain on that why keep it vague comment, is one of the really key important things about the CEDS is that when you there's always a question when you apply for federal funds is, was it part of your CEDS document? And if it's intentional, if we keep these intentionally vague, it allows us to say, oh yeah, that was that entrepreneur space that we talked about. Check on that grant application. So it's kind of Marla's done this before. It's kind of one of those tactics that we kind of don't really say out loud to the EDA, but is what we do when we draft this stuff. So if you notice things are kind of intentionally large or overreaching scope and description, that's why we're doing that, for what it's worth. So anything else on business development that we want to consider?
Minority, did you stick that one in there? And I'll work on that. Okay. I think that's good.
All right. Critical infrastructure. Like I said, I did reach out and I have ongoing conversations, and I apologize. I did get something from Leadville Sanitation District about 4:30 today, and I didn't get a chance to get it in here. But like I said, we have reached out to water and wastewater, which are really important, as we all know, to what we do. The one thing that was identified and was talked about is the Lake County bridge replacement. This is a good example, and this is something I probably need the commissioner's help with. If you could, point me in the right direction, who internally in your staff I should talk to, and then also maybe an introduction.
Yep.
Please.
Yeah, we can do that. It would be Michael Irwin with the Public Works Department.
So Michael, does bridges need to be separated from road improvement? Because in my past community, no lie, we had 2,000 plus bridges because of all the rivers and creeks. So the CEDS thing, we separated them out. I don't know.
So what's interesting, that's a great comment, Marla. What's interesting about Colorado, I intentionally do not put roads in here because CDOT has the TPR and the Transportation Planning Commission. And I have attended enough of those meetings to know that it doesn't matter what this document says, they're doing that they control transportation in all of Colorado. And I'm sure a commissioner is part of that TPR process. And so if you have priority projects that are part of Like, for instance, I know you just went through the enhancement of the downtown in Leadville, and I'm sure that was on the TPR for probably 5 to 10 years before it happened. So, there's that process involved. But when it comes to local roads, one thing that CEDS isn't going to fund is like chip seal projects or repaving projects. So the only time we look at roads is if it's going into like an industrial park and you need roads there and it's infrastructure as part of like water, sewer, and roads. Or I do think it's critical to make sure that if there are bridges, because as you know, the American Rescue Plan specifically outlines that bridges are eligible.
So we are working with partners to apply for the natural resource disaster funds that have been allocated to the county through EPA and CDPHE over the last couple of decades, and they have a new process. And so it's a culvert replacement plan to replace culverts with bridges, or rather the culverts that look like bridges for multiple reasons and justifications of water quality, post-fire activity, environmental and recreation in terms of fish habitat. So we do have one bridge that needs attention. But yeah, when you talk to Michael, you might talk to him about some of this, because this is definitely a infrastructure, has an infrastructure impact when these culverts are getting washed out. And we've started that project, and it'd be awesome to kind of link all of that funding potentially.
And would this, so if I heard you right, this should be its own standalone, like I have on here, it should be 2 projects then? Is bridge replacement and culvert replacement?
Probably, technically, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The
other water, can you scroll up back to the water infrastructure?
Yep.
I wonder if having the conversation this morning too with outlying neighborhoods and subdivisions that were developed with less planning perhaps, or oversight, and needing to look at that, and or is that something to specifically call out here, or are we just, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's a good example. Existing infrastructure and residential subdivisions are not going to be eligible. And
okay. Thank you for the reminder. New development.
It's okay. It's these kind of things come up, and I had La Junta ask for water meter replacements to be on this list, and it's like, if I put that on this list, then every water district's like, oh, you're gonna replace water meters. So I'd list every.
Okay, yeah. And I would say too, if like specifically storage, like we talked about a little bit in our last conversation.
Yep, that's a good one.
Is definitely.
Who is storage?
Storage for Parkville and storage for Lake County.
Is it Lake County?
It's the Lake County Water Enterprise and the Lake County Augmentation Plan. But I wouldn't take out the sanitation district.
Oh, I didn't. They're just below. I'm just copy and pasting.
Oh, okay. Did
Sorry.
not follow that. No, that's good.
Lake County, sorry, Water Enterprise, water storage. Is that right?
Yeah.
And sorry, who would be my contact there?
That's the board.
The
Board of Commissioners.
Oh, that's you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. So can I get a
what?
Yeah. Can I get a well, I know you guys have had a long day. Do you have a plan? Is there like sites selected for this at all?
Nothing formal. No.
Yes, there are. Do we have a plan?
Yeah, I'm really confident. So no. Sorry. So actually,
I'll tell you what, Sarah, we could talk about this offline.
Yeah, let's talk about this offline, because there are formal identified plans within our decree, and then there are other potentials that have not been as formalized.
And those are really, really good examples, Sarah. So, and I don't mean to put you on the spot there, so I apologize about that. Real quick, the other one was this is what we were talking about before, and including this, it was the augmentation plan, right?
Yeah, they're really one and the same. The water enterprise would really, the augmentation plan funds the water enterprise.
Okay, we'll just make it one for now, and we can talk about it. All right.
Okay.
Awesome. No, this is exactly what we're trying to do today. So thanks, Sarah. Is just to make sure that that anything that needs to be on the radar gets on this form right now, and we can continue to chase it down for the next month. So thanks. All right. Did I not save the right form here? Did you?
Yeah, because I added that. So
Yeah, you did. What was it?
Commissioner Mudge sent me an email and I geeked out on the Airborne Snow Observatory webinar. Thank you very much, Commissioner Mudge, yesterday. And I ended up putting it on this list just because of Snow Sweet, which is your snow water equivalent, and then your snow albedo, which I had to Google to figure out what the heck that meant. And that's like your dirty snow, but how it attributes to your snow wee, which is your snow water equivalent. But the Airborne Snow Observatory they fly over our mountain ranges every month from March to May and determine your watershed for like the Arkansas watershed. And they're looking for funding, federal funding, to continue this. But they're also doing it by plane, and the sensors can be done by drones. So they're looking for federal funding for that. So that's why it had ended up on my radar from watching this webinar, because I think knowing that amount of snowpack helps determine how much water you're going to have every year, which was super cool. Between the LiDAR detections of the sensors, it was just amazing. And I don't want to get in the weeds with that one, but keeping it specific, not specific, but keeping it real general so that we could assist them when they're doing their research, if it's possible. And this is a statewide program.
You know who runs it through the state?
Hold on a second.
It's all right. Marla, we can chase this
The
one down.
National Snow and Ice Organization. The National Snow and Ice Data Center is based in Boulder. I will put the link to the website, and you guys can all have fun geeking out on this because it was a new one for me. I enjoyed watching it, and it was yesterday.
I've worked with them.
Huh?
I've worked with them.
Have you?
Cool.
It was amazing. I was just fascinated. I spent way too much time last night researching this.
Nice.
Anything else under critical infrastructure? Because this is kind of the big one that we don't want to lose.
I don't really think so right now. I think we've kind of gotten it all. Sarah, you don't think anything from like the pavement management project would belong here, do you? I am not sure what we could even put in there, but I'm not sure if it would be applicable.
Well, I'm thinking that it doesn't sound like maintenance of existing infrastructure is eligible. And yeah, so.
Okay, okay.
But
I mean, I wish I could, but I mean, we're 13 counties, so it would be a long list if I put everyone's road and bridge in.
True.
Yeah, good thought.
And that's the other reason why capital equipment isn't on here either. I'd love to, but.
And also, I mean, infrastructure is like the sort of classical narrow definition. So it's not like other stuff like buildings or like infrastructure.
The Justice Center, yeah, the Justice Center we'll get to is on this list.
Right.
What about
building? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
What
you're
about with the protection, like fuel mitigation? I'm sorry, I can't remember if we talked about that at all.
Are
Is
you
that
talking
like
about?
totally outside? Talking about
This-
wildfire and like
Yep.
storage, like water infrastructure, stored existing new projects to protect existing infrastructure.
Gotcha.
No?
Yep. No, that's a good one. Let me think about where that could get placed on this list.
What? Sorry, I'll let you think through that.
Yeah, let me let's not lose. I'm gonna make a note right now. Because that's such an important one.
One other thing that's sort of come up in some of our discussions is, so like coming out of the sort of Superfund, mine waste remediation, we have this repository for soil that is too toxic to go to the landfill or to build with. We are running out of space on that. So, that is a piece of infrastructure that's critical to being able to build residential and commercial anything here.
No, that's a really good one. And what is that landfill called?
It's the repository.
Is it called the Lake County?
You could make up a fancy name.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta remember, it's 13 counties, so I got at least
Sorry,
word
I'm
that.
Yeah. Yes, that'll do.
Repository landfill.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And this is, and Jeff, one more time, I'm apologizing.
It's for storage of soil
Like a super site.
that cannot be
Yeah.
used or otherwise disposed of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like a super site from EPA.
Yeah, and we probably need to do a little research on whether there's so many rules around it being EPA Superfund related. Maybe it can't take other federal funds, but
Would it be the expansion of that we're looking at? Because it exists, right?
It exists, but there is going to be, it's going to hit its capacity and a whole nother site will have to be developed. Or, if we develop another, if we want a repository, we would need to develop another site.
Yeah, I think
and again, and to say, and the big, if there isn't one in county that we can accept waste from, then any developer, whether it's a public building or private, they're gonna need to truck that, super expensive to truck it out of county somewhere.
Yeah. So
Go ahead. Okay. Sorry.
I don't know if it would make sense to put in with expansion, like expansion and future acquisition for maybe, because I think we know we will have to have an additional site.
And I actually, I had a similar molybdenum mine site that was started in Crested Butte, and they actually have to pour concrete on all their waste and then truck it to the landfill for it to be accepted, and it's very expensive. So I totally understand what you guys are talking about. So that's a really good project. Great one.
This sparked an idea. Should we also have something for phase 1s, phase 2s for new development from EPA? I know there's federal grants out there that in one of my past communities, we had a grant that did phase 1s and phase 2s for, future developments, because we were in a coal mining area that did, that had remediation needs. I'll research that, Michael, and dig
If
into
you
it.
would,
Yeah.
I haven't had that request yet, and I understand why it's coming out of Lake County. The
I'll
only
take that on.
the only thing I would ask you to think about is, I tend to think that you would need at least a project location site. Is there like a place that you're looking to expand that needs phase 1?
Yep, we do.
Cool. So if you have that, then that would fall under business development.
Yeah, okay.
because that allows then that opens up the space to facilitate development, right?
Mhm.
Cool. All right, great ideas. This is perfect. You guys are killing it. Jump into workforce housing strategies. This one is an ongoing discussion. The first one is this Lake County Leadville Regional Housing Authority. I believe, one thing that we have been requested, and actually you'll be seeing a formal letter from SCED if we do work again with the coalition, making sure we get the blessing of the commissioners to continue on in this discussion. But housing is one of those things that myself personally are able to provide that planning technical assistance. So if we do decide to continue to assist, we'll come back. And again, I apologize that I did not realize that the previous discussion on deed restrictions, that the housing authority, what its current status was, and that it wasn't a fully functioning board of the county at the moment. So I made a assumption, and I apologize about that. But if we do continue to engage, I'll be sure to check back in with the BOCC ahead of that. But I think this is an important one regardless, because this is a next step discussion that I know is going on. So no objections to this being on here. Okay. Regional housing development incentives is also an important one that I think is kind of a vague one to keep in here. And this is going to be that public-private partnership moving forward as you guys look at development of physical projects on site. And so this is a good one just to have as a placeholder, especially if the funding comes available in LIHTC, which is supposed to like quadruples the funding of the availability for LIHTC over the next couple of years. We want this one on there for that. Make sense? Great. Anything else under workforce housing? I know this is a really big one.
That's my question. Is there anything else that we should be adding?
Well, I will tell you this, because this is such a huge issue in the whole region. This is probably going to be its own subsection of the CEDS, and I'm trying to just capture the different things that are going on in each community, and I actually see this kind of being like a SWOT analysis table that we will put together with all these different strategies that have come out of all the different regions, and seeing what would be applicable to Lake County and Leadville. So,
I mean, is there a way to your point, Michael, about making these as broad as possible? Is there a way to sort of just put in a clause, sort of like, so it's not just the housing authority, but it's like, and related measures to implement recommendations from the housing policy plan or whatever, but,
sure.
Because there's some things other than I think what the housing authority itself might administer. For example, on my mind is like really getting, I'd like to take another, I'd like to take another run at inclusionary zoning and doing our, I think it's like a nexus study, so that we really have a firm basis on knowing what we're asking large developments for. And to me, that's a critical part of getting some of those like smaller units on the more attainable end of things.
It was a strategic housing plan, right? I have it, Jeff. I can.
Yeah, it's the Lake County Housing Action Plan.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a really great idea. I like that.
And I can fill that in a little bit more detail too. So
yeah,
great. And just as an update, we're considering, potentially partnering and talking and assisting with those conversations moving forward. But like I said, prior to us engaging again, we're going to be sure we talk to the commissioners. So I apologize again about that. So, anything else on workforce housing? I know that's a huge issue. Okay. I think these are great ones. So, all right. So, Marla, I'm gonna put you on the spot again on a couple of these going forward. So if you want to talk
Yeah.
Quick thought on the workforce housing. it, and maybe it's all encompassed in those broad things, but I'm wondering if like specifically encouraging or assisting employers with the development of employee housing, or would that wrap in? Could you?
That's this one.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yep. No problem.
And one
yeah.
other, this might be in, I don't know if this is explicitly in the housing action plan, but something that had come up in our discussions was, for some of the county-owned land near the city core, are there some quick things we could do to get utilities to them and make them developable? So it's new infrastructure, but it's very much, I don't know.
Yeah, so we should, again, I would love to talk with the commissioners. We probably could spend the rest of the time talking about this. But your American Recovery American Rescue dollars could be eligible if you're sending utilities. There's certain ways to do that. We are actually working, I'm doing a 60 unit development proposal that we're checking. It's the one thing I'll tell you is there's no easy solution to housing. And if there was, then we wouldn't be talking about it, right? It's a check the box exercise that is going to be a steady grind for the next 4 to 5 months. And I'm working with those counties out there to do a dispersed housing developments, and what I will tell you is that each of those is a little bit different. But the one thing I will point out, and at least from what I have learned through being part of these housing talks, is that you guys are actually, believe it or not, and I know it doesn't feel like it, but you're kind of ahead of the curve in the fact that you do have land banked. There are so many communities that I've been in our district that don't have available land to even build it on. And I can tell you from my days in Crested Butte, that's the number one impediment, is not even having the land. And if you don't have that, you want to talk about really difficult, hills to climb, is that initial land acquisition. So Jeff, I'd love to chat with you guys about strategies of how to build. And it's easier to build for sale workforce housing and target those AMIs, like those 80 to 160 to 200% AMIs, because you get your money back out of it. But there's some Tabor regulations and such that you got to make sure you don't do any debt obligations without voter approval and such. So happy to talk through those strategies and how they go about them. Done those projects in Crested Butte. And those are, my old presentation used to be how to build housing without LIHTC at the housing conferences. So I'm happy to chat about that in more detail when it comes time. All right. Marla, do you want to jump on this next one? So we're talking under this category is education and workforce development.
Yeah, I can jump on all these. So the first one ties back into that ecosystem, but it's specifically for training for CMC, the public schools, community leaders, that sort of thing. And I know of several grants out there that are federal grants that are applicable for this. And I can add a little more description to this, so we can narrow it down. The next one is
sorry, Marla, before I sorry to cut you off, but what is your school district's name? It's not Lake County Public Schools, right?
Yeah, right, Jeff?
It's just Lake County School District.
Lake County School District. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I get organization right.
Yeah. The county workforce plan is something that Mark Habitzel and I have been talking about after we had our virtual job fair, and they would be the lead on that one. So I'll add some narrative to this too for the next one, but it's knowing, which ties into the talent, equity, and pipeline one. School funding, I left that as a question mark, guys, because that one is kind of, maybe Jeff can help fill in the blanks for master plans for schools.
Yeah, I mean, the school has a recent master plan that would have more than I can say here. So I'm probably either the superintendent, Bethany Massey, or Paul Anderson, the CFO, COO, CFO.
Michael,
but I think
I'll reach out to them, Michael, Bethany, and
so
yeah. Well, and sorry, and I can say, I mean, the next thing on the master plan, the new elementary school is going up, but the next thing on the master plan is, I'm trying to think of the right title, but it's addressing the intermediate school classroom space. So they either need to renovate the current intermediate school or move the classroom space onto the site of the new elementary school.
So I'm going to delete this here, and then Jeff, on that comment, this institutional building, when we talk about the Justice Center, let's make sure we put that project on here, and then we talk to the school district. That's
Gotcha.
But that's great. That's a really important project.
In the chat, I put the talent pipeline equity document that is pushed out from the state. And I've spoke to some folks at CMC and Rachel regarding this, and Bethany, and it will have to be a regional approach for this, but it's determining your talent pipeline and your collective impact of that talent pipeline. Desperately needed.
We will look to you for a description.
Got it.
All right. Renewable energy. Anything on this? It's you guys, I understand it's like we really want to be part of the renewable energy, but it's really hard at 10,000 feet. Now, the one thing I will tell you is the one thing I did think about that is important is EV charging stations. And that's probably more of a transportation issue too. But is that something you guys have looked into at all?
The city has a couple coming online right now.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The city has some online and CMC has some already.
Let's make sure we get that in here, because obviously that is a up and coming major, it's going to, communities are just like gas stations and post offices and grocery stores. They're essential to have a functioning community probably in the future. So
yeah, maybe while we're here on transportation. Oh, sorry.
Let me go back. We'll come back to that here in a minute. Sorry. Anything else under renewable energy though? And it's okay if, I'll be honest with you. One thing we discovered in the mountains where I was at is you're really looking at green energy purchase programs more than actual production, like I'm looking at in the plains. So,
well, although we have land, and we do have solar community cards. I think it's more community scale, but Excel has a program on that. So I hadn't thought about, but I could see a project to just sort of like inventory, and assess the potential of sites.
well, Jeff, one thing I'll share, I think this is actually a great project right here. This is, should say solar community solar gardens, not solar community gardens. Sorry. This is actually a really good project. In that the one thing to keep in mind too is because of energy costs, especially with you guys talking about affordable housing into the future, is partnering with the doulas. While it might be hard to get money out of them for a lot of different things, but potentially getting those community solar gardens offset the housing costs to your neighborhoods is a really good idea. And that actually goes into the big pie chart of how to deal with housing issues.
Yeah, and we do actually have a couple large substations in the county. There's the one up at Climax when they close, or even before they close. There's one down opposite Crystal Lakes. Probably others I'm spacing on, but yeah.
Sorry, I'm typing.
The other thing that came up in some conversations, and it may be like a super long shot, but is with more forest thinning for fire protection, there might be potential for a small wood chip or wood pellet operation.
Yep, and we captured that under industry opportunities. So that's a good one. And I do have a note of that. Okay. Anything else under that one? Good thoughts. Recreation and tourism. So the one I have is the Lake County Trail expansion and connections. Tell me if this description sounds all right. Enhanced trailheads and connections throughout the county to address increases in use and expansion of recreation opportunities. Intentionally vague, right? But what else under tourism that we want to talk about? This is a big one for Leadville and for Lake County. Have you guys looked at creative districts at all? And that's a Leadville question.
Sorry, what was that question, Michael?
Have you looked at the creative district at all, or has Leadville had any conversations about that?
A little bit, but not like into the weeds detail.
Okay.
I know when we met the last time, we talked about museums.
Oh, that's a good one. That is actually a really good one.
Yeah. I know. I'll figure out the narrative for that one. I'm not sure. I'll lean on the mayor because that's one of his passions for. We have so many museums, how we can collectively have them working together or collaborating. So
I'm horrible with spelling this.
In the trail expansion and connections, we may want to add in cross-country skiing and using the Lake County, trying to remember the name of Dan's group that runs the golf course and is expanding trails down at the golf course. Do we want to add them into that trail expansion? So just add them as a unit. I can get the name and get it to you, Marla.
okay.
That's a good one. And the only other question I have is one of the other ones. Do you have anything around OHV, like the track out there?
I don't know the answer to that.
What? Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, just to throw in a few more words to cover all our bases, like I would in the program description, I would add like motorized and non-motorized. So it doesn't sound like it's one or the other. And then the other thing I would throw in, again, to cover all our bases, it's not just expansion of the actual trails, but I think what we've been like realizing and discussing is our rec department is currently sort of indoor rec and like facilities, but there's no county or any entity that's really managing any of this stuff. Like no one's going out trying to see, do we actually have legal access to the trails people are using? No one's picking up trash. No one's enforcing whatever rules we have.
I'm not.
Sorry, I think one other group. Oh yeah, there's the cross country, and one other group I think should be listed here is LCOSI, LCOSI, Lake County Open Space Initiative. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how deep. I mean, the Forest Service is big on doing that as well with trail expansion, and I'm trying to figure out how to be careful not to necessarily talk about trail expansion as it relates to motorized, because a lot of our motorized use is on county roads. And so I wouldn't want to there's already impact issues and land property issues. So I just wouldn't necessarily want to confuse that. But it should be, and the snowmobile club is a huge, they groom the most miles for us in the wintertime.
Is that Lake County Snowmobile Club?
Like I think it's Snowmobile High Riders.
So is there federal funds for grooming equipment?
No.
For expansions of things?
No, so let me actually kind of talk about why I'm fighting to put this on with the EDA. And this is the same thing with housing. The EDA is like, we don't fund housing. What Michael, why are you doing this? And I'm like, EDA, you don't have, I can't get a new business in Lake County if there's nowhere to live. And the
Yeah.
same thing with, Lake County is an easy sell, but when we talk about recreation in the Southeastern Plains, it's like, why would I take a job in La Junta? And it's like, well, there's a ton of really cool stuff in La Junta, and there's all these really great things, and they're expanding their rec programming. And so I think it's all part of that bigger bubble of how do you get a good workforce and what it takes to keep the workforce. And that's why recreation and tourism is in here. So I wouldn't read too much into this beyond, that's why it's intentionally vague.
Got it.
And the EDA is probably going to say, Michael, I'm going to say, please. So anyways. All right. Jumping ahead, healthcare and public health. So we did get Brian Turner from Sol Vista submitted a project for the expansion of the mental health facility, and same thing with the St. Vincent hospital expansion. So we got those two today. So great stuff. The only thing I probably need help with, Marla, on the St. Vincent is the cost estimate.
Okay.
Is if you know what that project wound up coming out to. Jeff, you had something under transportation, and I didn't mean to cut you off. What was that thought before we jump to these actual projects, these other projects?
Well, Kayla's working on some local transit studies with the city, but I think some larger topic here. I think local, and also, such a high percentage of our workforce commutes over, over the hill and out of county. Yeah, I think, and in the description, make it both. I think there's ideas of like local shuttle options, and then also ideas for beefing up the existing bus service or other options on the 3 roads out of town.
So sorry about that. Yeah, the idea, Michael, behind the Lake County Transit, local transit, is to assess the local need for in-county transportation, whether that's like an on-demand service or a fixed route service, and then how that connects to regional transportation.
Yeah. Does this look like a good description right now? Development of local transportation routes, public transportation routes.
I think so. I think the piece that we're missing in terms of transit is like, I feel like we have a really strong transit connectivity to like Summit and Eagle County for services, but not so much to Chaffey County. And I know that Chaffey County provides a lot of like dialysis support and medical support, but we don't have a very strong link to Chaffey County in terms of transportation. So hopefully that will also open up the regional options as well.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah, and I would add, I think there's lots of ways to go here, but I also think, having worked as a remote worker prior to this job, it's really hard to get to any regional transportation hubs or DIA. You can't even, there's nowhere to park in Summit to take any of the existing shuttles or bus. You really have to want it to not get in a car to go to the Front Range or the airport.
And you don't have busing come through Lake County, right? You do?
You can connect to it on the I-70 corridor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is I think the CEDS and the TPR is planning an expansion route through Lake County.
So the Salida bus to Denver and Pueblo and Alamosa and to Gunnison. That started out as it was called Neighbor to Neighbor, and it was a one van that was doing, was a nonprofit. And I worked with that group and we created that regional bus system. So that was one of my little, well, I shouldn't say my, because it was kind of cool, but I was on the board of directors and the president of that organization for 4 years when we got all that CDOT grants to make that bus system expand. And I know for a fact that the bus staying service to the I-70 corridor is one of two of the final missing legs of the statewide transportation. So you're right on the TPR looking at that, because if you could go from Chaffee up north, the issue is right now to go from Chaffee, from Salida or anywhere in our district, you got to go all the way to Denver, then go up I-70 and back out to go west. And the idea of that is that because Salida's route where it ends, if you did have a bus service that took you up to the Vail Transit Center, you could then get on that westbound connection and not have to spend a whole day going around the state. So that is something that TPR has looked at. And I know I personally, when I was in Region 5, was tooting that horn for years. So that's something that I know that it's there. So I'm gonna put that into that.
Thanks for sharing all your background and experience. Really cool to hear.
So I'm meeting with Josh tomorrow at the airport about several things, and I'll get him to help me with the description for the airport expansion. They have a huge master plan. So, but I'll get with him tomorrow.
And this one's a really important one, given the, an example is that we were doing a terminal expansion plan for the Gunnison Airport, and with the CARES Act, it got funded 100%. And we were fighting amongst ourselves, all the municipalities, about who was contributing what to that project. And then the CARES Act happened and we stopped fighting. It's nice. So anyhow, so then this one is, we're missing, well, one, the Justice Center. You guys, have you done architectural plans? Is it engineered already?
Chris is on here. I think she could jump in here. Hopefully I think she's still on here. Chris, can you give us any insight on this?
Well, I know they're, in terms of the plans and stuff, I think part of it is we have to actually acquire the site before they can finalize any plans. And so right now, we're in the process of negotiating with Union Pacific on that agreement to acquire the site. So I know that is still pending. They're also working on some retrofitting plans, if you will, for the existing building, courthouse, jail type of thing, for some temporary facilities. And so the architects have been authorized to proceed with some of that. But we don't have those plans in hand yet.
Yeah. So it's safe to say that this is still in planning then?
Yes. Definitely.
And then,
well, as I say, yeah, you've got it right. The site acquisition planning and well, in terms of, I don't know if it's for expansion.
oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's just say for new or expansion of new or.
Okay, yeah. For new or perhaps retrofitting, new or retrofitting of courthouse and jail facilities.
Thank you.
Who's the lead contact for that?
Well, it depends on the day. Katie's been out of town this week. She's the Justice Center Task Force liaison. She's the one facilitating the project. She works through my firm, but so she's usually the primary contact for information. This week, it's kind of been me.
So if we were writing a grant, would Lake County be the grantee?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And have you done any kind of analysis on costs? It's okay if you haven't.
Well, yes, to some extent, but again, part of that depends on once the site is acquired, because until they know exactly what site they're working with, being able to specifically design and then cost estimate it out. There has been some preliminary cost estimating. A lot of that, though, goes back to some of what y'all were talking about earlier about the site that's being targeted has some substantial environmental cleanup that'll be needed, and it'll depend on whether some of that environmental stuff can stay on site and pretty much be contained there, or if it has to be moved to either the existing repository or a new repository or that type of thing. So.
And then as far as funders that you've been talking to at the state and federal level, have you had any beyond DULA?
USDA, I believe we've got some grant funding through USDA as well, and some very limited funding through the underfunded courthouses grant program. And there are other, in fact, we have been fast and furious working on letters today for additional grant funding that is being targeted through the federal government for, and excuse me, bear with me 1 second, I can tell you the acronym for that program for, let's see, the, what's a D, and unfortunately I don't have the directed funding.
Tell you what, would you put it in the chat when you find
Yeah,
it?
let me see if I can dig that up, and I'll put that in there in terms of what that's for. But
Chris, is this the CDS, the community directed?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Congressional earmarks.
Right. Right.
Yep, that's a good one.
Yeah, and so the deadline for requesting that's tomorrow, and so we have letters going out to Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper and some other folks regarding that.
Yep. All right, great. That one looks a lot more filled out. That's exactly what we're going for today.
Okay.
Awesome.
Just a quick, is it helpful to have some cost estimate? I mean, because it sort of seems like we don't know what we're talking about. I mean, we know it's going to be a large building. I mean,
I mean, I mean, like 2 to 4 million, and it's probably more than that. But if there's like if you do have a pretend or a
20 to 40 million.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, you probably need to add some zeros to that.
No, that's what I was. Yeah. Sorry. No, it's this. These are the types of projects these are the big types of projects that should need to be. You're probably going to wind up getting federal funding when you talk about a project like this, and that's why this is such an important project to make sure we're listed on here.
Yeah, and I would suggest maybe adding still some more zeros there.
Sorry,
because it's millions.
Yes, you're right. Sorry. Thank you. I'm trying to type and talk. It's hard.
Right. No, you're doing great.
All right. Anything else on that one? That one's a really important project to make sure we've gotten it.
Well, and once you'll send us this document, and then we can vet it and add and work on this till the end of June.
Yep.
So, Chris, we can kind of look at this again if you need to.
That would be great, because that way I can also get Katie's eyes on it, and we can flush that out with her too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. The recreation center and swimming pool, and excuse my ignorance, is this existing? And I think we talked about the liner, right, at the last meeting. Or am I missing? Am I in a different county today? I'm sorry.
No, this is us.
You're good.
Your faces all were like, I was like, am I wrong? Sorry, trying to read the room here.
No, so we've recently closed our swimming pool because it really just is failing beyond repair.
Is it an outdoor pool or indoor pool?
Indoor, and it was built in '74 and then renovated 20 years ago with a 20-year lifetime.
We also have an ice skating rink, Michael, though.
That need stuff or? Do we need to talk about that or?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just the outdoor pool. I'm just joking.
Okay, gotcha. I got it. Yep. No, that's I lived in Crescent View for 6 years, so I'm like, how often is that outdoor pool used? And actually, the reason I asked if it was outdoor is because Goku doesn't fund indoor facilities if they're enclosed, and so I was just making sure that this isn't a pool at a park or something. So that was the reason for that. Okay. Do you have a cost estimate?
I think it was like 2 to 10 million for the swimming pool.
10,
And
10 to 12. Two
Yeah.
was a phase, like a repair phase.
yeah, I mean, yeah, like 2 is the Band-Aid.
4
might
is,
not work.
yeah, I think, yeah.
And well, sorry, go ahead, I mean, so this is entangled with the intermediate school. I mean, it's literally the same building. And that's why it's sort of like, if money was no object, we would knock it all down, move the school classroom space somewhere else, and build a new rec center with a swimming pool and a community center there, So, that it's a large site with a aging building that's commingled with the school district, and we just need to figure out what to do with that, intermediate school / swimming pool site. And the failure of the swimming pool is really just sort of like the, one more prod, or so, sort of a forcing mechanism.
Okay.
Do we need to add the intermediate school on?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. That is a very important one. What was it? Intermediary or intermediate?
Intermediate.
Intermediate. And the project here is move classroom space from current aging building to new site adjacent to new elementary school.
Did I screw that up when you were talking?
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's just the classroom space because the new elementary school, the mechanical, gym, library, is all sized to house this classroom space.
And sorry, it was the Lake County School District.
Yeah.
And then do they have a cost yet?
They do. You should check in with Paul Anderson. I would leave that. I think it's that 10 to 14 million, but I would double check with cost escalation and stuff.
That concludes our list today. Thank you for sticking with me again. What did we miss? This is a great start. It's not the end today. So again, really appreciate taking the time to go through this because this is really the meat of what we care about, is trying to get the funds where we can to help build these facilities and facilitate economic growth, and also supporting our local communities and access to those federal funds. So thank you. Please, if things come up, either send them to Marla or myself. Marla, it's going to be the official gatekeeper of this list between now and June. And we keep a list obviously on my server here, but let us know. And again, we'll be checking back in with you. And Kayla and Marla do sit on the board, so they will see the initial draft. And so the plan here is that that draft is looked at by the board in early August, and there's a 30-day public comment window, and is adopted by the end of September at the latest, so I don't get in trouble with the EDA. And also, I do appreciate the fact that we are uniquely primed to have a brand new CEDS when all the federal stimulus money becomes available, which a lot of states will not have. So I think this is really awesome timing for us. So
Awesome.
yeah, so we'll be sure to be coordinating with any additional ideas. Michael@sked.com for those in the public that are out there. If you need to get in touch with me or you have an idea, certainly shoot it my way. And thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. This was great.
All right, we'll chat soon. Anything else, you guys, before we adjourn?
No, I don't think so. I think this was great. Thank you so much, Michael and Marla, for putting this together. I so appreciate it. This was
Yeah.
great.
Really productive. All right. All right. Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.